from Guyana, the region and the world. Compiled in the Newstalk Radio Newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com.
Good day with your major newscast. I am Jessica Daw. First with the highlights. The COVID curfew may be lifted sometime today. The opposition, APNU plus AFC, and the Speaker of the National Assembly are still at odds over claims that he is biased. In the region, child rights activists are paying keen attention to explicit videos of children being posted on TikTok. And internationally in Canada, an Ontario man has been found guilty of 3 counts of second-degree murder in the deaths of a woman and 2 of her children east of Toronto, with the presiding judge calling the attacks vicious and brutal. And the Prince of Wales, who has tested positive for COVID-19 for a second time, recently met his mother, Queen Elizabeth, but the 95-year-old British monarch is not displaying any symptoms, a palace source said. The details of these stories and more in just a moment.
Advertise with us on Newstalk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM for best coverage on programs on motivation, beauty and health, parenting and relationships, knowing your rights, and a variety of enlightening content, and get value for your money. Call our helpful staff today on 223-1056 or 223-1041 today.
Now for the news in detail. President Irfaan Ali late Thursday signaled the end of the COVID-19 curfew. Addressing the launch of the latest edition of Guyana Explorer magazine, he said that the government was seriously considering lifting the curfew.
What is needed in this stage in dealing with the pandemic are the protocols, ensuring that all the agencies have the sanitation device, ensuring that we continue to educate people on the vaccination program, ensuring that the guidelines and protocols are observed. But for sure, we can't continue with a prolonged curfew. And it is my hope and intention that that curfew can be removed once the necessary steps are followed.
The curfew was instituted in March 2020 when Guyana had recorded its first COVID-19 death. It was expected to be a virus control mechanism, but it has been mostly violated by businesses or seldom enforced by police. President Irfaan Ali on a Thursday asked the Guyana Defense Force to put in place a plan to protect the gas-to-shore pipeline. He issued the call at the opening of the Guyana Defense Force's annual officers' conference.
There will be a pipeline, a gas pipeline that is coming into Guyana. You look around the world and see how gas pipeline can become an instrument of threat to destabilize regions and countries. So we have to have our own strategy dealing with the protection of these assets, the management of these assets. How do we respond if there is an unforeseen challenge out there? We can't wait in the unlikely event that something happens and then we are hustling for a response. We have to have a strategic approach to all of these things now.
The gas-to-shore pipeline is expected to run more than 200 miles from the Liza 1 well to West Coast Demerara Shore and then run along the west bank of Demerara to Wales, where a gas-powered electricity plant will be built. The president says the Guyana Defense Force also needs to position itself to deal with the opening of new roads. The opposition, a Partnership for National Unity plus Alliance for Change, APNU plus AFC, says that its parliamentarian Sherrod Duncan has not been properly suspended. He was suspended for disorderly conduct after he refused repeated calls by House Speaker Manzoor Nadir to stop being abusive. Angered at Minister Nigel Darmlal telling a female opposition parliamentarian that she needed a dildo, Mr. Duncan called him nasty and accused Mr. Nadir of condoning his behavior. Opposition frontbencher Attorney at Law Kemraj Ramchatan says that House Speaker Manzoor Nadir asked Minister of Governance and Parliamentary Affairs Gil Teixeira to move a motion for the suspension of Mr. Duncan while the House was still in the Committee of Supply.
In relation to, and this is my final observation, to the matter of suspension of Mr. Sherrod Duncan, well, I am making the observation that it happened in the Committee of Supply rather than the larger National Assembly when the suspension ought to be.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Opposition Chief Whip Christopher Jones also formally wrote the Speaker on the wrong application of the Standings Order. Mr. Ramchatan also sought to assure the House that opposition parliamentarians will try their best not to cause a repeat of Wednesday's disorderly conduct.
Mr. Speaker, we, on this side of the House, would like to share our concerns with what we regard as a deterioration of the debate that occurred yesterday and reached a certain height that created problems for the House. And we will strive as best as possible to ensure that there be a maturity in the debate. And we would expect or are urging that we get that also from the government side.
APNU plus AFC parliamentarian Kemraj Ramchatan. Minister of Local Government Nigel Darmlal late last night withdrew all offending remarks in the House during the consideration of the 2022 national budgetary estimates. He did not specifically refer to his remarks about a dildo to a female opposition parliamentarian. He did not apologize, and withdrawal of the offensive comments was not unconditional.
This House had some issues which we believe that became very heated. And so I'd like to, Mr. Speaker, to indicate to you that if I had said anything that was misconstrued, that it was not my intention to make those statements to that effect. And if they were statements which were also unparliamentary on my part during the course of the interrogations, then I would like to withdraw them as well.
The withdrawal of the statements was done in the absence of a Partnership for National Unity plus Alliance for Change parliamentarians who had walked out of the remainder of Wednesday's sitting after their parliamentarian Sherrod Duncan was suspended. Mr. Darmlal later on his Facebook page explicitly apologized to anyone who felt offended. Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony says that many people in Guyana's interior regions do not want to take a COVID vaccine.
We have been sending out to areas in the interior locations to administer vaccines, but unfortunately in some of the villages that we've gone to, there is a lot of vaccine hesitancy. And despite going in several times and offering education, it still remains a concern and a problem because people are not taking the vaccines. So it's not a matter of access. The vaccines are available, but because of misinformation, I think we're having that challenge.
Dr. Anthony says that more money has been allocated in the 2022 national budget to intensify vaccination across Guyana, including the interior regions.
Nevertheless, this year we have allocated enough monies to continue these campaigns where we'll be sending out teams to do vaccination in various communities across the interior.
The number of active COVID cases continues to drop steadily. Official figures from the Health Ministry show that there are now 3,127 active cases, with 3,038 ordered to isolate themselves at home to stop spreading the virus. Of the 89 persons who are hospitalized, 18 are very sick and are receiving intensive care. Within the past 24 hours, 160 new cases have been recorded. Now for the news in the region. Atop Barbados tourism industry is rising concern about the haphazard implementation of COVID protocols at the Grantley Adams International Airport. The Barbados Tourism Authority wants rapid tests to be accepted rather than only PCR tests. Details are from Barbados Today.
Tourism and healthcare officials are being chided for what has been described as inefficient protocols at the Grantley Adams International Airport that are causing major headaches for visitors to the island. This, as chairman of the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association, Rene Coppin, warned that industry players are at their wits' end over lack of transparency and clarity regarding the systems that have been governing the entry of airline passengers over the last 2 years.
We have used COVID as a scapegoat for what is fundamentally lack of proper systems and processes in the management of things on this island. And we continue to have, as if we are in Groundhog Day, it's become a running joke for us in our board meetings, that we continue to have the same set of complaints regarding the ease of entry into the island, the treatment to the testing protocols, the transparency of the protocols, and the way that people are entering through and even the utilization of the Safe app. We continue to have issues with all of these things, and they're not being addressed consistently. And these are things that we've asked as an association to have addressed over the last 2 years. And we continue in 2022 to have some of the same problems that we had in 2020 when we started this pandemic. And we are at the point where we feel that this is no longer something we can continue to be silent about.
Current protocols require vaccinated travelers to present a negative PCR test taken within a 72-hour period prior to travel, or a rapid PCR test to avoid quarantine. The BHTA is calling for rapid antigen COVID-19 tests to be accepted for entry as an alternative to the PCR test.
Certainly we want to ensure that our protocols are both keeping Barbadians safe, our visitors safe, but also reflecting the realities of the virus as it emerges. And we have requested, therefore, that we look at expanding our testing regimen to include the rapid antigen taken within a shorter time frame before travel. We are doing that as a measure that we're seeing that has proven very effective in other markets, certainly in the Caribbean and elsewhere.
Chairman of the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association, Rene Coppin, ending that report from Barbados Today. The rapid increase in the number of TikTok videos featuring Jamaican children has drawn the attention of a well-known children's advocate. Diane Gordon Harrison says her office will be moving to clamp down on parents and children involved in what is most times slack and improper content. Ms. Harrison says her office has an increase in the number of videos and will be taking steps to first identify the children and then conduct social inquiries into their home situation to determine what is fueling the increase in age-inappropriate content and when there is need for criminal prosecution. The Jamaica Observer reports that she was responding to a question from a guest who wanted to know how parents can deal with TikTok videos featuring toddlers demonstrating intimacy such as passionate kissing. Gordon Harrison said that a care and protection policy, including interviews with the parents, will decide whether there is a need for an inquiry. A group of unvaccinated students specializing in physical education at the University of Trinidad and Tobago, UTT, are worried that they may be falling behind. This, as the students tell Bhavita Gopal Chan, some courses are being held at safe zone facilities, preventing them from attending. UTT has since acknowledged the students' concerns and is looking into the matter.
Latoya Evans is almost at the finish line of achieving her goal of being a physical education teacher. But during her last lap at the UTT Sporting Academy in San Fernando, where she attends, Latoya stumbled upon a problem.
Right now, it's just basically two courses I'm having an issue with. The issue really is that lecturers, or I should say few lecturers, have chosen facilities to host sport courses that where we are required to meet physically, right? They call them practical courses. And they have chosen safe zone.
Because of this, Latoya says she and other unvaccinated students are unable to attend classes for netball and basketball.
We have other sports courses and those lecturers have no issue to facilitate us, right? There is a basketball court and other courses, as I say, they're using that facility. But however, this particular course do not want to use that facility and they choose to use external resources.
The students note that there are sporting zones on the school compound available where the lecturers can engage practical classes.
Why other sports courses are held at the compound, which is San Fernando Tech, there are other courses right now enrolling and they are facilitating students like myself. But there are a few that, as I said, not doing it.
Another student tells us they've been reaching out to the lecturers and university staff offering solutions, but these have been falling on deaf ears.
Yes, we understand that they want to have the face-to-face and the interactive part of it, but if it is that it was done online already, for those of us who are unvaccinated and we cannot go to the facility, why don't we have the option of doing the course online as well? Because you're running for 2 years prior to this, online.
The students say they feel boxed out.
Out of the 12 weeks, we have 1 day per week for each course. And they state that once you miss 2 practicals or 2 classes, automatically you fail. So 1 week has already passed and there is only 1 week left. And if it is we do not attend, automatically we fail.
CNC3 News reached out to UTT Chairman Professor Clement Imber, who acknowledged the students' concerns. He explains that the UTT has been outsourcing private sporting facilities for many years. However, these have now been designated safe zones. He assures that the university is working on a solution to ensure that no student is left behind and they can soon engage in practical classes with their peers. Bhavita Gopal Chan, CNC3 News.
More news in the region. Superintendent of Barbados' prisons, Lieutenant Colonel John Nurse, has apologized to prison officers for the ad hoc COVID-19 testing that took place last week. That testing was ordered following the identification of a new cluster of cases at the St. Philip Jail. While the testing was done in good faith, he said it had not been sanctioned by the management. Last week, outspoken trade unionist and consultant to the Prison Officers Association, Caswell Franklin, said some prison officers were not pleased about a sudden testing mandate at the start of their shifts amid an outbreak at the penal institution. However, a notice dated February 2, 2022, entitled Apology to Staff, which was obtained by Barbados Today, stated that the Superintendent of Prisons sincerely apologized for and deeply regretted any inconvenience caused by the testing they had to undergo that day. Unfortunately, the Barbados prison chief says that prior authorization from the management of the Barbados Prison Service and the sensitization of staff did not occur. In a statement issued by Minister of Home Affairs and Information Wilfred Abrahams, earlier on the same day the testing was done, it was reported that 5 COVID-19 cases had been discovered among the tested employees. The testing had been triggered by more than 50 inmates, kitchen staffs, and prison officers testing positive a few days prior. Here now is our international news coming from the BBC.
Hello, this is Julie Candler with the BBC News. Russia has defended the participation of the teenage figure skater Kamila Valieva in the Winter Olympics, despite a positive dope test in December. The Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said she had Russia's absolute support. The 15-year-old helped her team win Monday's team figure skating event, but the gold medal was not awarded. Olympic and skating officials are trying to stop her competing in further events, saying a provisional ban should not have been suspended. The IOC spokesman Mark Adams said a rapid resolution was essential.
We want to expedite this as quickly as possible. It's a legal issue, and legal issues unfortunately can be very, very complicated. But for all those concerned, not just the Russian athlete, but obviously all the athletes concerned in the previous competition, we all need to see as quickly as we can a resolution of this, and we are working as fast as we can under the circumstances.
The UN is warning that South Sudan could spiral back into civil war due to delays in implementing the 2018 peace deal that brought nearly 6 years of conflict to an end. Emmanuel Igunza reports from Nairobi.
A new constitution is yet to be drafted, nor have required laws and a timetable for elections been agreed upon, with just a year before the expiry of a transitional government formed between President Salva Kiir and his rival Riek Machar. Addressing reporters in the capital, Juba, the chairperson of the commission said disgruntled soldiers who have been waiting to be deployed as part of a unified national army had resorted to crime and violence, further worsening security in the country. The commissioners say they had had harrowing stories of rapes, abductions and sexual violence committed against women and children.
The World Health Organization says tens of thousands of new measles infections were reported in Afghanistan last month, along with nearly 160 deaths, nearly all were children under 5. A spokesman said widespread malnutrition in Afghanistan had made people more vulnerable to illness. Imogen Folks reports from Geneva.
The WHO hopes to begin a measles vaccination campaign, but not until May. The outbreak is another sign of the crisis facing Afghanistan. This week, members of the Taliban government were in Geneva to talk to aid agencies. Kabul's new leaders appear to be relying on the humanitarian sector to support collapsing public services. Aid agencies, for their part, say they will do all they can to help those in need, but warn that aid alone cannot fix an entire country.
United Nations officials say they're trying to secure the release of 2 Western journalists who were detained in Afghanistan 5 days ago. The Taliban also arrested their Afghan producer and drivers. The 2 freelance journalists were commissioned by the UN's refugee agency to take photographs of internally displaced people. World News from the BBC. The UN chief Antonio Guterres has urged the international community to strengthen its efforts to protect the oceans. Speaking in France, Mr. Guterres called for greater action to rein in overfishing and to curb carbon emissions from shipping. His words were echoed by the US climate envoy John Kerry.
It is the ocean that makes life on Earth possible. It produces more than half of the oxygen that we breathe, and even that is at risk. More than 50 to 80% of that oxygen comes from the life of the ocean. And indeed, the ocean provides food and livelihood for billions of people.
The government in Benin says the number of people killed when 3 bombs exploded in a national park this week has risen to 9. The W National Park straddles the borders of Benin, Burkina Faso and Niger, an area under threat from Islamist militants. The South African wildlife charity that manages the park said 6 people had been killed when patrol vehicles hit the explosive device. A teachers' union in Zimbabwe has gone to court to challenge the government's decision to suspend thousands of staff who've not been going to work, citing low pay. On Thursday, the education minister said those teachers would be suspended without pay for 3 months. The union leader said average salaries of around $100 a month meant teachers were unable to feed their families. The Kremlin has said that the French President Emmanuel Macron sat several metres apart from Vladimir Putin at their meeting on Monday because he refused to take a Russian COVID test. The two leaders were pictured at opposite ends of an unusually long table, prompting speculation over its diplomatic significance and many jokes on social media. A French source told the BBC that the Russian test required a health protocol that did not fit in with Mr. Macron's schedule. BBC News.
And that was your international news. Here now is a recap of the highlights. The COVID curfew may be lifted sometime today. The opposition, a Partnership for National Unity plus Alliance for Change, and the Speaker of the National Assembly are still at odds over claims that he is biased. In the region, child rights activists are paying keen attention to explicit videos of children being posted on TikTok. And internationally, in Canada, an Ontario man has been found guilty of 3 counts of second-degree murders in the deaths of a woman and 2 of her children east of Toronto, with the presiding judge calling the attacks vicious and brutal. And the Prince of Wales, who has tested positive for COVID-19 for a second time, recently met his mother, Queen Elizabeth, but the 95-year-old British monarch is not displaying any symptoms, a palace source said. And that was your major newscast. I am Jessica Daw.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demeraraways.com